joining me today. I have seen a lot of people doing the mirror glaze cake recipe and a lot of cakes of those sorts online. I want to show you the one that I've tried a lot of different recipes, and this is kind of the one that I found that works best for me. But I'm also going to show you a different option for the mirror glaze at the very end, which is going to be fun. So this one I have found to be, if you're a cake decorator like me, you kind of like to be, a little economical with your ingredients. This one I think works best, it tastes best, and it's best for your wallet too. So I think you're really gonna like this one. Okay, so as far as the recipe, what I've got is 3 tablespoons of gelatin, 3/4 cups of water, 2/3 of a cup of sweetened condensed milk, 1 3/4 cups of white chocolate, 200 milliliters of light corn syrup, 200 milliliters additional of water, and 1 1/4 cup of granulated sugar. So that's what are the total ingredients. And then, so what I'm going to start with is the gelatin and the water. And I've seen some people add the water to the gelatin. Doesn't work so great. Always sprinkle your gelatin on top of the water. It absorbs a lot better, and you're going to have a lot less lumps. You'll see it's already starting to absorb. So as that's starting to bloom is what it's called. It's basically just kind of activating all of the gelatin. I'm going to go ahead with my other ingredients. I'm going to hold fast on my white chocolate and corn syrup. What I'm going to do is put this into a bigger container and just leave it alone for now. But I can go ahead and add the sweetened condensed milk in here as well. And while this is just resting, I'm going to go ahead and cook my last 3 ingredients in a saucepan. So I've got, again, my 200 milliliters of corn syrup. My 200 milliliters of water, and 1 1/4 cups of granulated sugar. All right, let me get this stirred, and I'm just going to put it on the stove on a medium heat to simmer, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Okay, so this has just come to a simmer. I'm going to turn this off and bring it back over here. Now in here again, I've got the sweetened condensed milk and the white chocolate. I'm going to go ahead and scrape the bloomed gelatin right on top of it. And the heat from the sugar and water and corn syrup mixture that I have here is really going to help dissolve that gelatin. Typically you would warm that up, but here you have the heat coming into it. And this is a container that is hot enough to withhold soup, like a hot soup, so I'm fine putting it in here. You do want to start with a bigger container like this, so if it's glass or whatever mixture, whatever material it is, it's fine as long as it's pretty big, because you do need it to, the size to mix it up. Okay, so I'm just giving it a little bit of a stir there with a spatula just to make sure it's coming off the bottom and out of the corners. I'm letting it sit here for about 20 or 30 seconds, but my next step is to use a hand blender. And what I want to do, it's like some people call it a stick blender, but basically you want to get down in here and make sure that you're not incorporating air. You want a nice smooth mixture, but it's really going to do the best job at getting all of that white chocolate nice and smooth. Okay, so this is a pretty thin mixture. You can get in there and see that it's pretty liquidy. A lot of the other mirror glaze recipes that I've tried have been thicker, almost like a melted chocolate, and I really don't care for that too much. This one, when it gets the right temperature, it feels a lot better. So one thing I'm going to do last step is to add a little bit of bright white food coloring. And what this does is it makes it a little bit less transparent. You can't see through the icing as much, and also plays off colors you may add to it to make them pop. So I'm just going to add a couple of drops in there. And then I'm going to just stir that in. And I'm going to add a little bit more. This foam is on the surface. You want to make sure not to create additional air up from the bottom. All right, I think that's going to be good. Now what I want to do from here, you really need to let this cool. Some people will let this cool overnight. That's fine. You can warm it back up to the temperature you need. or you can just let it cool down at the temperature you need and use it right away. But the one thing you want to do while it's cooling to make sure that you're not creating a skim coat on the surface of it is you'll take some plastic wrap and then just push it right down on the very surface of the mixture so that that air is not creating like a little film or a skin on there. And then you'll just set this aside. You can put it in the refrigerator and then, like I said, check it overnight or just in a couple hours and it'll be ready to go. Okay, so the next step is to prepare the cake part of the Miraglaze cake. So what I did is I made a bundt cake shape and I just kind of cut it into quarters to kind of show you different stages of how to prepare this. And you can actually make a cake of any shape like this. You could, do something fun like then go back and piece that together and kind of have it snaking long ways. That might be a fun centerpiece to your table. But all I have here is just a Swiss meringue buttercream. And this is, I marbleized this, it's actually orange and chocolate. So I added a couple drops of orange oil into this buttercream. And this is chilled. So all I'm gonna do, the very first coat that I'm gonna do on here is very thin because I really wanna take advantage of the shape of the pan. And if I just kind of slop it on here kind of thick, you're gonna kind of lose that definition. So I'm just really gonna make sure that I follow the pattern of the cake. And then once you get down to the end, you're just gonna, again, kind of a thin crumb coat on that. And then make sure that you're pulling off the excess so that you have a good thin layer all across the whole cake. So I won't finish this. Let me go to the next stage. This one's already been done and I popped it in the freezer so it's good and solid. Okay, so what do you want to do at this point is kind of the same thing, but you're just adding more of the same icing. This is going to be the undercoat and the Miraglaze is going to go right on top. So once you have this thick enough and in good shape, then you'll go and pour the Miraglaze on top. But you definitely want it chilled firmly. I like to pop it in the freezer for a couple minutes before I'm ready to pour the glaze on. So I actually have another piece that I finished this part on that's in the freezer. I'm gonna grab that and then we'll go straight to the Miraglaze. Okay, so after the second coat, and again, you can see it's kind of rough. It's really hard to get it smooth when it's in these different bumps and shapes. What I've got here is some pretty hot water, kind of as hot as I can stand it to the touch. And again, after that second coat, it's been in the freezer, so it's nice and firm, really, really cold. So what I want to do is I'm just dipping my fingers in the hot water. I'm working with clean hands. Make sure you wash your hands before you do this part. And I'm just going to take somewhat moist fingers, not sopping wet, and I'm just going to kind of rub out those extra bumps to smooth it out. You want this nice and smooth underneath, so that when the Miraglaze pours down on it, it really has a nice smooth finish instead of like the rough bumps and crevices. So I'm just going to rub all these out, and then once it's finished, I'm going to pop it back in the freezer just for a couple minutes just to make sure it's nice and cold. And then I'll remelt my Miraglaze to the right temperature, and we're going to finish it off. Okay, so I've got my cake prepared, my icing mostly smooth, and popped it back in the freezer so it's still nice and chilled. I'm gonna move it over here on top of this rack so that the Miraglaze can be caught in the pan once it drips off. So what I've got, the batch of Miraglaze that I just made, I popped in the fridge. This one I made yesterday. So what I'm gonna do, let me show you how I can pull this off. And you can see how firm this is. It's almost like gelatinous. So what I'm going to do is pop this back in the microwave, and I'm going to do it in sections so that I can color them and add color, different colors that'll mix really pretty on the cake. So let me just kind of scrape these into these containers. And again, it's kind of like a Jell-O at this point. So just take what you need out for each color, and we'll warm that up and be right back. Okay, so I've got my Miraglaze separated and melted down and cooled back to the correct temperature. When I say correct temperature, it's a little over 90 degrees Fahrenheit, but really what you want to do is, you don't want to bring up your spoon and drip like this. That creates more air bubbles. But just kind of pull it up the side of your container and see if it starts to stay, have a little bit of a thickness to it, a little bit of a body. And that's when you're pretty much at the right temperature. So I'm just gonna pick some random colors here. I think I've got some red And then I'm just going to stir that in. And then I think I'll do a little bit of black. And this one, and then leave the other one white. So again, trying not to get a lot of air incorporated. I'm not bringing my spoon above the surface very much. Trying to get into all the corners and just get that a solid color. It's kind of a pretty hot pink. I think I'm going to leave it like that instead of going more red. Okay, and then this one I'm going to leave kind of that creamy white color. So I'm going to start with my white base, and it's cool enough. This is really chilled. I'm going to start with a really quick, thorough coat on everything and just let it drip off. And then I'm going to go back with the colors over the top of it. Be generous with this. You can always gather up what's left if you need to. So then I'm going to go back over with a little bit of black. And then also with some touches of the pink. Okay, so then this is going to set up. You can pop this back in the refrigerator, and it's going to stay nice and glossy, and then you can just move it to your serving platter. Now, I promised you I was going to show you something fun to do with the mirror glaze other than just the glaze itself. So I've actually got a little bit of orange over here. Let me stir that up a little bit. That's a good temperature right there. So what I've got here, let me grab my cupcake out of the freezer. So this is, again, frozen, and this is my hot water. I'm just using the same method as I did with the cake itself. And I'm just going to kind of smooth out those little bumps and ridges. And then make sure it's good and chilled. If you have little dimples like that, you can always go back and add more buttercream just to make it nice and smooth as well. I want that a little bit smoother. Okay. So I've got this mostly smooth, and I've got some orange mirror glaze in here, and I'm going to add just a touch, a few drops of the black just for some fun, different colors. And then what I'm going to do is just dip the cupcake. Now I don't want to dip it past. I want to actually stop about 1/4 of an inch above the edge of the liner so that it has a little bit of room to drip. So I'm just going to kind of take the cupcake and dip once or twice. And we'll see what kind of pattern we end up with here. Now as it comes off, I'm going to kind of rotate the cupcake a little bit just to make sure I'm not getting huge drips. But because it's frozen, it's going to set up pretty quickly. And we're going to end up with a pretty cool pattern. And then you can go back once it's set and pipe a nice thin border right around the edge. And as it's dripping too, you can go back with a paper towel or just, a clean finger and pick up the drips. Just keep an eye on it as it's starting to form. I have another one over here. Let me show you what I did. So this is one that's just been in the refrigerator and all set up. So you can see it's still got its gloss. It's got a pretty pattern. Every cupcake is going to be different. So that's just the mirror glaze technique. Use it for cupcakes if you want. I think it's a good basic recipe, and you can actually reuse what you have that's dripped off, so don't let that go to waste either. So find the recipe on the website, sweetwise.com. Thanks for watching.